We are recording the interview of Bob Repar. The interview is being conducted by Jeremy Dobbins from Wright State University's Veterans Voices Project. The interview is being recorded at Wright State University. It is 11 o'clock a.m. on September the 7th, 2017. So, to begin, we'll start out just talking about how you joined up and what branch you joined up and any reasons you might have. Or you were in the Air Force? Or
Yes,
I'll let you
at
tell
that
yourself.
time I was in the Air Force. Basically, I joined shortly after high school. There wasn't a lot going on, and I thought that if I went in the service, I could maybe get my foot in the door for some kind of trade or something to use on the outside. And so I went down. The Air Force struck me as having the best training at that time, and so I could do something when I got out, and ended up going in the Air Force. I became basically a bomb loader, of which I didn't find any use for on the outside, but I got to serve with a really good group of guys during my 4 years, so
When
I
did you
enjoyed it.
enlist?
November 22nd, 1970.
Okay. Um, where were you born at?
I was born in South Bend, Indiana, and grew up in southwestern Michigan.
Okay. Is that where you joined from, out of Michigan?
Yes.
Okay. Um, did you have any siblings or anything growing up that went into the military or?
I had a brother who was 10 years younger than I am, and he later went into the Marine Corps and then into the Air Force. So
Okay. Um, what made you choose your job in the Air Force, being a bomb loader?
once we got into basic training, they made it sound really neat, so I thought I'll try it.
Um, when you went to basic training, where'd they send you to?
Lackland Air Force Base, Texas.
Oh, okay. How long was the training cycle? Do you remember?
I don't remember specifically. I think it was around 12 weeks, but I'm not positive.
Long enough.
Yeah, I
Um,
was there over Christmas. I remember that.
okay.
So,
After your basic training, did they send you to any specialized schools before you went to? Not that they don't have a fleet in the Air Force, but the forces.
no, yes, I did go to Lowry Air Force Base for what the Air Force calls technical school. And that's where I learned all about munitions and loading. There's actually quite a bit to it. You have to learn about all the different types of bombs and everything, and both conventional and nuclear. So
Did you enjoy that kind of work or?
actually, I did. It was very enjoyable.
Where was your first duty station when once you got done with your training?
Wordsmith Air Force Base, Michigan.
Were you there for very long?
About a year, I think it was. I got there in 1971 and then left in August of 72 for Utapao, Thailand.
Okay. Was that did your entire unit go to Thailand or was that an individual?
No, it was individuals. The
Okay.
military's learned a little more. They're sending units instead of mostly individuals. And
Okay. Yeah, I knew in Vietnam a lot of times guys during that era went in individual. I didn't know if like an air crew if they would make you travel with a plane or something.
the air crews usually would, but for munitions and maintainers of the aircraft, we usually went, uh, I'll call it onesies and twosies. Now, during a big push, they may move an entire squadron over there at one time, but for the most part, it was you went over, did your 1 year, and then came back and somebody replaced you.
Okay. So you were in Thailand?
Yes,
How long were you there? For a year?
for a year.
Okay. Um, when you were in Thailand, how big was the base you were stationed at?
It was a large base because of the fact that it had B-52s on it. It also had KC-135s, and there was also a contingent of U-2s.
Oh, okay, that requires a pretty big runway too for that kind of
Yes.
hardware. Was the did you enjoy Thailand, or was it a miserable time, or kind of?
A little of both, but nowadays I remember the good times more, and I had a lot of good times over there. The Thai people were a very friendly people. They were really great if you got to meet the real Thai people in that.
Yeah. By that point in the war, were I know things were pretty, like, politically, it was a disaster back home. Did that affect you at all with, like, your when you were going and coming home? Did that kind of up un
Yeah, actually, it was kind of weird because this does sound really weird, but I kind of wore black bands the previous spring for the students at Kent State, and then I'm over there fighting the war less than a year later.
Yeah. Was there were there a lot of vocal opinions among, like, the the I don't want to say troops, the Air Force personnel you were with? Or did you?
Um, Not really. You know, most of us believed in our country, and we were going to do what we were told to do. I don't think we ever really sat down and philosophically discussed Vietnam. We might have, if we saw something on armed forces radio or television, we might comment about the protesters and that. And then I did, when I came back, I did get spit on at the San Francisco airport by a protester, and you know, but the part of the country I lived in has always been conservative. I know Michigan's been a blue state, if you want to use the new terminology, but they're still, even though they're Democratic, they're more conservative Democrats
I
than
think
anything else.
they consider it more of like I think they call it, like, blue collar Democrats, where, like, working people, like,
Yes,
same
yes,
thing around here, more or less.
exactly.
Like,
So,
I like this area. I've told people, I work hard and I expect my neighbors to work hard, and they expect the same out of me, and that's just kind of the way life is around here.
yes, and that's a good life.
Yeah.
Right? Very good life.
When you were overseas, then were you ready to come home, or did you enjoy being deployed? I know it can go either
It's a
way.
mixed thing. I did enjoy it over there, but I was ready to come home. I miss my family and friends. Times were a lot different then. Uh, we couldn't call home. You had to write a letter to do that, or you went to what they called a Mars station, stood in line for several hours to see if they could get you hooked up through ham radio, and then hope somebody was at home to answer the phone.
Yeah.
So, I never did that. I always found something else to do, or we were working a lot of hours. And
What kind of did you work shifts on the planes when you were over there?
yes, we work. Normal shift was 12 hours a day, and we'd work 6 on and 1 off. Whenever there was a push, it might be 12 to 16 hours a day, sometimes a little longer, and no days off. Sometimes we could go 30, 40 days or more without a day off.
Oh, okay.
So,
When you were working, would you load? Were you assigned to one plane, or would you just load any plane that came to, like, your spot?
whichever plane needed them,
Oh,
and
okay.
we'd go to the plane and just you get a like a work order, and you go out there and load the aircraft.
Did you use like a golf cart type thing to move the ordnance around, or did they have like a vehicle for you? I would imagine.
We actually had a special vehicle, and it was called we called it a jammer. It was an MJ1 lift truck, which was basically a when you sat on it, you were actually lower than I'm sitting right here, and it steered from the wheels in the back, two long rails on each side, and you pull up, and the front arms would lift up and pick a bomb up, and the bombs would come out in a 40-foot flatbed set up on a rail. One man would roll the bombs down to the end and get it positioned, and then the jammer driver and the another guy would come around. They'd grab it and they'd run around to the aircraft where it was going to be loaded, and then like load it up into either the bomb bay or under the wings. Also, sometimes we had um, preload bombs for the bomb bay. If we were carrying a load of 108 500-pounders, was it 84 of them would go in the bomb bay, but they were preloaded for us. We had teams that worked out in a bomb dump that would load these, I'll call them portable bomb bays, and then we had a special trailer. We'd push those in and move them in under the aircraft and load them.
How far away was your bomb dump from your working area? I assume pretty far.
Right there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you came out of the bomb dump and onto the parking area for the B-52s.
Did you guys call it? Was it dug into the ground? Is that what you called it, a dump, or was it just you guys?
No, I don't know where it ever got the name dump, but that was just the standard.
Oh, okay.
I forget the official name for it.
Yeah, but that's understandable.
Yeah.
You call it what it is.
Yes, and yeah, and it just what it was a oh god, it was acres and acres of bombs, but there was all dirt revetments, and they put so many bombs in each revetment, and then when it came time to load, we had guys who their specialty was assembling the bombs, and they'd assemble them, and then they'd take them out to either the preload or out to the flight line.
Okay. Did you work at all the different points in that process at some point, or were you like specialized in one slot?
Actually, I primarily worked in the flight line. After a while, I became a member of a loading evaluation team, which was responsible for training other teams as they came in. And then from there, I went to the loading standardization crew, which was responsible for all the overall training. We oversaw the loading evaluation teams and that. So, and then one of our assignments too is we also rewrote the manuals for munitions loading and that. So.
Okay. Did you probably got promoted pretty quickly, I would imagine. You seem like you're a really smart guy, and sounds like you were a worker back then, because you kept getting put in these important slots.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, well,
no, I think so. I've always been. I consider myself a good worker, and I've, I guess you could say, been upwardly mobile, both in the military and my civilian life.
Was that work ethic? Was that a commonplace in your unit, or did that kind of make you stand apart?
I think I stood apart a little bit, but we all had a great work ethic. The guys who didn't, we kind of shunned or would get on them ourselves. you know.
Oh, you policing your own type thing.
Yes.
So you were over there for a year. Um, what were the holidays like while you were there?
Just another day.
Yeah.
I mean, Christmas is 72. We were working 7 days on, no days off, 18-hour days because that was the big bombing of Hanoi, what they called Linebacker 2.
Okay.
So we, if you want to use the term maximum effort or whatever, but we were.
Yeah, that was when the going downtown type, I think,
Yes.
was been described
Yes.
as. Okay. So during that, how long did that constant workflow, how long did that last for you? The whole campaign?
The, yes, what was it? 11 days. The 11-day war. But we were on it prior to that in preparation.
Yeah, making
yeah.
sure all the. I imagine you had to do a lot of the pre-setting the bombs for as many as they dropped.
Yeah.
Did all of the planes then? Was that whole squadron stationed with you, or were there a couple bases that they would fly out of?
There was Utapau and then Guam. Also, they had sent a lot of B-52s to Guam for that.
Which was the more preferable base for guys in your position, where you were at Guam, or was there really?
I was never at Guam, but I think Utapau was the better place to be.
Yeah. Were you? You're probably a little bit more remote. Were you around? Well, I guess with the pilots, they're all officers. Were there a lot of officers around you, or were you kind of remote where you were?
No, we had officers, obviously, with the flight crews
Yeah.
and that, but vastly the majority was enlisted. So, because it takes a lot of people for each hour of flight time, there's a lot of maintenance that has to go on every aircraft.
Do you know about how many people were on the base you were at, or do you have any idea?
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, a lot, enough.
Yes, it was. Yes.
I understand. I couldn't tell you any of the numbers of the places I was at either. So did you? You seem like you adapted pretty well to life in the Air Force. Is that a good assumption?
Mm-hmm.
What was it just your personality that clicked, or do you think like the way you grew up maybe helped you, or have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, I've done a lot of self-assessments through life and that, but I think a lot of it has to do with how I was raised. Um, you know, some of it I think even has to do with the era I was raised in. But no, I was held accountable by my parents and family, and in those days even the neighbors would hold you accountable. So
Okay, so you just were never allowed to get away with nothing, more or less, or
no, I won't
held
say I
accountable.
didn't, but
You
when
were held accountable.
I got punished if it was the wrong thing. Yeah.
What were you doing before you entered the service? I don't think I asked you that.
At that time, I was working for a carpet company, laying carpet.
Oh, okay.
I had graduated from high school the previous June and got a job working with this carpet company. And it wasn't bad work. It just,
Hard work.
well, yeah, and I'm not afraid of hard work. It's just that it wasn't what I really looked at wanting to do the rest of my life. So.
I can understand that. I did roofing all through high school before I joined the Marine Corps.
Okay.
And looking at the last summer I did it, I looked around and looking at the older guys was like, this isn't what I'm going to do the rest of my life. So I can understand being like.
And I grew up in a farming area. We had a farm at one time, and so I've been used to hard work all my life, and I've worked on farms and that. You know, I never had a summer that I wasn't working somewhere.
Yeah. When you were overseas, how did you stay in contact with your family? You mentioned that there were ham radios, but you never used those.
Just write letters back and forth, and I did get in trouble there. In those days, I didn't write for a long time, and during one of those periods, I think it was like about 3 months, our base had been attacked with a sapper attack, and it made the news back here, and my mom was worried, so she called the Red Cross, and they contacted the Air Force, who contacted the chaplain, who contacted my commander, and I got called in and ended up having to write a letter home while sitting at the commander's desk with him and the chaplain watching me, and then proofreading it when I was done. And then they personally, I think the chaplain personally mailed it back to make sure it got mailed.
That's funny. I had a situation similar to that with a guy who didn't contact his family for 4 months, and we had one sat phone. You'd call home maybe once every month or so.
Right.
And yeah, the commander ended up standing there and making sure he called his mom because his mom had contacted a congressman.
Yes.
He was like, "Why can I not hear from my son? What's going on?" And so it's funny that kind of stuff even happened back then.
Moms always have a way.
Yeah.
You can't get past mom.
Yeah. So, did you have a sweetheart or a girlfriend or anything back home during that time, or?
No, I didn't. I had a girlfriend when I first went in, but after I came back from basic training, Jody had struck and she was dating somebody else.
Yeah.
So, and it probably turned out for the best. I met the woman I'm married to now after I came back from overseas, and we've been married 44 years now. So.
Oh, yeah, I'd say it worked out for you
Yeah.
then. What did you do for recreation? And I know you didn't have much time off, but I'm sure they had to let you decompress a little bit at some point. Otherwise, mistakes get made.
We were lucky. We were right on the Gulf of Thailand. So, in fact, the one runway ended right at the beach. And so we had a little area where we could go down and swim in the ocean. There was a bar down there. We had it was a GI version of a drive-in movie, only you walked in, but it was a big outdoor screen, and you walk in. Every now and then a cobra might slither through during a movie, but cause a little stir. But
yeah,
we do that, and then we go downtown, or we got an R&R, and I went to Bangkok for a week, which was really nice.
Oh yeah, that was probably a pretty good time.
It was a good time, and like anything else, unlike your era where you had General Order Number 1, where no drinking was allowed over there, we were allowed to drink. So when we got off, we'd go to the Airmen's Club, the NCO Club, or there was a town a few miles away that we'd go down to that had bars that catered to the GIs and that. So.
Oh, okay.
There was stuff to do.
Yeah. Did you make any? Did you get close to anybody while you were overseas?
I had several friends over there. I was friends with a Thai special police officer who was just a really nice guy. I can't even remember how I first met him over there, but and then knew several of the civilians and that.
Oh, okay. Did you have like civilians like cut your hair and whatnot?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Were they did you guys have any problems with like the people that come on your base to work ever? You mentioned a sapper attack. I've heard some horror stories.
Yeah. Occasionally, but not too much. The sapper attack, there was a couple of them while I was there, and they got caught before they could do much damage, but they caught them. I think one group, they were coming through the wire on one of the perimeters, and the other one, they caught them. There was a little clong, it's a clong. It was kind of a cross between a river and a drainage ditch that came out into the ocean, and I forget how many. It was two or three of them got caught coming in through there. But they were caught before they could do any damage whatsoever.
Yeah. It's amazing how people are creatures of habit, because we had in Afghanistan they call them wadis, which is basically like a river
Right.
slash irrigation ditch they use, and they also dump everything in it. But people would use those all the time to move around, trying to be sneaky fox or whatever.
Yes. Yes.
So you were in Thailand for a year. Where'd they send you when you came home?
I got stationed at Mather Air Force Base in California, just outside of Sacramento. And
Okay. Did you keep with a training cadre? You mentioned you did some work like writing training,
yeah,
or was that more?
I actually ended up being a team chief. When I got to Mather, they gave me my own team. I didn't get on the training cadre there, so I got you put it, my own load team.
Did you like doing that, or was that just?
Yeah, it was fun. I've always liked supervision. When I got out, I became a police officer. I worked my way up to lieutenant there. I went back in the National Guard and Reserve, and ended up retiring out of the reserves as a first sergeant. So.
Oh, okay. Were you in the Air National Guard or the Army National Guard?
Army National Guard.
Oh,
So
okay.
I've covered two.
What made you go into the Army instead of the Air Force when you did
Wanted
that?
to fly.
Oh, okay.
So I wasn't a pilot. I became a crew chief and a flight medic on a medevac helicopter, and we flew mountain search and rescue. We also fought the forest fires by either inserting the firefighters or dropping the water out of those buckets you see under them.
Oh, okay.
And we flew the earthquakes and that.
Did you join the National Guard right after you left the Air Force, or did you wait a few years?
No, it was 10 years.
Oh, okay. What was the catalyst for doing that? You wanted to be in the air?
Yeah, I wanted to fly. I got to fly a little bit while I was in the Air Force, and I loved it. So I thought, oh, why not? And a guy that worked with me was in this unit. He says, come out and look around one weekend. I did. I got hooked, and was there for 14 years, and then thought I'd retire. And then Iraq kicked off, and the reserves pulled me back in, and I just stayed until I hit mandatory retirement. So
was that in the 90s, the Iraq, or was that were you talking about 2003?
No, I was in the medevac during the 91 Desert Storm.
Yeah.
And then in 03 they pulled me back in.
Oh, okay. So did you go? So you went to Kuwait, and then you were in Iraq.
Actually, no. When they pulled me in, or actually during Desert Storm, I'm sorry, our unit ended up not going over. We deployed from Mather to Fort Bliss to backfill, and then we're scheduled to go over during phase 2, but there was never a phase 2.
Yeah, things went way better than they thought they would.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And it was unfortunate, but we picked up a deployment also from Bliss to Honduras, and we lost a crew down there when they were trying to do a medevac. So
was it a mechanical failure, or was it?
No, it was. I'll be blunt on it. It was pilot error.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they flew into an overcropping, and they got in where they shouldn't have. It had gotten smoky and foggy, and should have aborted, but they got up there, got lost. Yeah, it happens.
I know the Marine Corps recently keeps losing helicopters just because of maintenance, like mechanical failures and whatnot.
Yes.
I didn't know if it was that sort of issue or if it was something else.
No, this was strictly.
How many helicopters they deployed to Honduras? Was it your whole squadron?
No, 3.
Oh,
So
Were you a part of that mission down there?
no, I wasn't.
Oh, okay.
So
Did you have to do a lot of training to become the crew chief for one of the helos? Because I assume you didn't do that
yeah,
first time.
yeah, I had to. I got an on-the-job training, so to speak, but I had, I think it was like 16 or 18 different books or phases to go through before I could qualify as the crew chief. And then for flight medic, I had to go to a school for that, which I was able to do in California. But
Oh, okay. Where were you a police officer at? I didn't ask you.
Folsom, California.
Oh, okay. Were you a part of the California National Guard then?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Do you live in California presently?
Yes, I live in California, and I have a house in southwestern Michigan because that's where I grew up.
Yeah.
So
You mentioned you said you're from Michigan. I just kind of assumed you
oh no, I'm sorry.
you
Yeah,
stayed there. Okay. What made you move to California?
when I like say I met my wife when I was stationed at Mather, and I like the climate out there. You don't have to shovel rain in the wintertime, so I stayed out there and decided I wanted to be a cop. Got on the local department, and
The rest is history. As they
yeah,
say.
that's as they say. The rest is history.
What what made you decide to join the police force? Just the job, or was it a?
I just thought it was a neat thing to do, and I enjoy helping people. So it was a good fit.
Okay. I've had a bunch of friends who've gone to law enforcement and firefighting since they've gotten out, and I think the number one recurring thing that whenever I talk to them is that they got kind of bored with just not feeling like they were making a difference in the day to day. They wanted to be in an environment where they got to make a impact.
Exactly. Yes, and there's the adrenaline rushes too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know how that is when you start getting used to an adrenaline rush. You kind of live for the excitement, and police and fire provide that.
Yeah. Were there a lot of veterans in your police force during that time, or were you kind of a?
No, I had quite a few.
Okay.
Yeah, and in fact, there's not nearly as many nowadays, but I think police and fire veterans gravitate to it because they like the structure. They're actually paramilitary organizations in a sense, just out of the way they're structured. So
Yeah, the command structure and whatnot.
yes,
So you met your wife. Is she from California?
mm-hmm.
You met her while you after you got back from your
Yeah.
deployment.
yes.
Okay.
I met her. Like I said, I was stationed at Mather Air Force Base, and she had a girlfriend who was dating a guy in my squadron, and I met through that, and the rest is history.
Yeah. Do you still talk to? Have you been in contact with any of the gentlemen you deployed with or were overseas with? I know times have changed a lot with that.
A few of them, yeah, and that's why I'm here at this reunion.
Oh,
So,
okay.
and there's a couple of guys who I was overseas with that actually live in Folsom, so I stay in touch with them. And then also out of the Guard and Reserve, I'm in touch with a lot of the guys that I served with there constantly. I think the Army and the Marine Corps, they tend to stay in touch more than like the Air Force because everything is more, you're in a unit and you're doing everything together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you become very like clannish almost with
Yes.
your group. I know that's how we were. It was very us versus the world, or that's how we viewed it. most of the
Exactly.
time.
Yeah.
I was curious. I know like with the advent of like social media and stuff, I think the only really good thing about it is I've been able to stay in contact with almost anybody you want to, which is kind of an interesting thing.
Mm-hmm.
You get to, I don't know, see people kind of from afar.
It is good. I mean, there's pluses and minuses, but that is one of the biggest pluses about it.
Are you affiliated with any veterans organizations?
Ah, yes, I am. I have quite the list.
Oh, okay.
I am a past commander and still an officer with the Folsom VFW. I'm a member of the American Legion. I'm an associate member of the Marine Corps League because my son being a Marine. And I'm currently the commander of the local AMVETS post, and I'm an associate member of the Blue Star Moms.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, veterans organizations fill a lot of my time.
What made you start getting involved with like organizations more? Just the free time, or?
Well, when I retired from the police department in '06, I kind of thought, well, I'll go down and see what I can do down at the VFW. And I ended up, they needed a second in command. I got appointed to that. And the next thing I knew, I was the commander. And I was the commander for the next 4 years. And like I said, I've been involved in that, and through that, got involved with the other organizations.
Okay. This is gonna kind of be a like a silly question, maybe, but looking back on is how the question is how did your work experiences affect your life? And I know that's kind of like I feel like almost a silly question to ask, but those kind of joining the Air Force, obviously it affected your whole life. Um,
Yeah, let's be honest. Between the Air Force and being a cop and the Guard and Reserve with all I did, the majority it was good times. Okay. Um, there were bad times also, you know. Um, just, you forget the bad times, remember the good. And yeah, some's affected me, but um, so you gotta get past the bad stuff. You know, you can't sit and dwell on it. You can't let it run your life. You gotta take all the positive things you learn in that and just move on. You know, you I don't know how the best way to describe it is, but you can't sit around and wait for somebody to take care of you. Okay? We're human beings. We're meant to care for ourselves. So you gotta pull yourself up by your bootstraps, put one foot in front of the other, and move on.
yeah, I know that's one of those things that it can be hard to realize that some things are just out of your control. That all you can control is how you react
They
to
are.
it.
Yep.
Yeah, I know that's a can be a really hard pill to swallow.
Mm-hmm.
It really, it, I know it's taken me I don't know, a lot of effort and energy to, I don't know. I have kids too, and I look at it like I try to look at like building good memories. I try to build good memories so that when those bad times come in life, it's you don't just you can think when you start reevaluating your life, you can think back because I know I have some childhood memories that are really good that when I was in my darkest places and assessing my life, it's always good to be able to find the nugget.
And you got to be able to take the pain. And I'm not a psychiatrist or whatever, and they'll probably say this is wrong, but I think you'll understand. You got to be able to take the pain full times, and you got to be able to lock it away. It's always going to be there, but you got to deal with it, lock it away, and move on.
Yeah.
You know,
The sun's gonna rise tomorrow morning no matter what you do.
exactly. And you have responsibilities now, so you've got to make sure you're healthy for your kids and teach them the right way and make them grow up to be, productive citizens.
Yeah. Well, that you pretty much answered that question. I was going to ask you, what message would you leave for future generations who will view or hear this interview? Do you have any, that might sound like kind of a corny question, I know.
I don't know. You want some Bob Repar 101 or something like that? No. My suggestion to any of you out there who may look at this someday is live your life to the fullest. Live today like there isn't tomorrow, but also plan for 2 or 3 tomorrows. That may sound corny, but I think a lot of you will know what I mean. And you're going to have setbacks in life. Don't let them get you down. You just have to keep moving on. Okay?
Yeah, it's good advice, honestly. Is there anything you feel like you haven't discussed that you would like to air? I don't want to leave any stone unturned for you.
No, I think we got everything, and I wouldn't want to bore my family if they ever look at this and I'm sitting here or standing on a soapbox going on about stuff, but no, this is fine.
Okay. Well, thank you for doing the interview and thank you for your service.
It's my pleasure, and thank you for your service.
I appreciate
Semper Fi.
Semper Fi.